Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rich Longo, and I'll be your host for today's presentation. I want to say thank you to each and every one of you that have taken time out of your busy day to join us. I see we have folks from as far away as Ottawa and all the way down to Texas and Florida, and thank you once again. Today's presentation is in regards to the Ivanti ITAM tool presented by Todd Hogan. Now, Todd is a seasoned professional with over 20 years of ITAM-related business value leadership and related product development experience. Todd's passion is to define, build, and deliver business solutions to customers, partners, and executive stakeholders. Todd's strength is to educate, shape, and lead internal teams such as product development, engineering, customer support, and professional services in the creation of solutions that directly impact the customer by satisfying their very specific business needs. Todd believes the ITAM offering that cannot deliver measurable business value in terms of TCO or ROI is not a solution, just another product that the consumer should avoid. Before we get started today, Todd, let me introduce our organization. First of all, we are Flycast partners, and we're here to deliver a seriously amazing IT experience. And as you can see, we have aligned ourselves with Ivanti, another one of those world-class tool providers. Flycast Partners has been founded and staffed by personnel that have many years of experience in the IT space. And we took the best ideas from these collective experiences and added the best components necessary to grow and become a leading value-added reseller in the North American IT market. We offer best-in-class implementation services and training in ITSM, ITAM, batch processing and workload automation, capacity optimization, cost control, artificial intelligence and data tools, as well as enterprise service management, all using nothing but ITIL best practice. Our professional services team can easily scale up or down to meet the IT needs of any customer, regardless of size, your complexity, or budgetary restrictions. We offer implementation services both on-site and remote, as well as training to reinforce your company's long-term IT success. Our ongoing remote administration and support service offerings will enable your organization to focus on those normal day-to-day operations, saving you both precious time and money. I encourage you to reach out to us at 844-FLYCAST, that's 844-359-2278, or simply visit our website at www.flycastpartners.com and chat with one of our ITSM specialists live during normal business hours. You can email us at info@flycastpartners.com. Utilize our website to find additional training that you or your coworkers or friends may have been looking for, or actually look for upcoming webinars that may be of interest to you and your coworkers, or additional technologies that you've had interest in learning about, downloading white papers, learning more about ITIL, taking some ITIL training classes. I encourage you to float around freely and enjoy. So without further delay, I'm actually going to turn this over to the main reason why you're here today, Mr. Todd Hogan of Ivanti. Todd, I am passing over control of the screen to you.
Thank you. I hope you can all hear me okay.
I hear you loud and clear, and we see your screen even better. Folks, before we get started, I want to encourage you to please take the time today to type in any questions that you have in the Q&A section of this WebEx. Towards the end of today's presentation, Todd is going to answer those questions live right here on this WebEx. So please take a couple moments, type in your questions as we go through today's presentation, and we'll get to those at the end of today's presentation.
Okay, well, thank you. It's an honor to be here today with Flycast, one of our greatest and best partners. We're excited to talk to you today about asset management. I know that each of you are at different levels in your journey towards asset management. Some of you are just getting started. Some of you are halfway there. Some are frustrated because you can't get the funding you need internally, and some are looking for better tools to do it. So what we want to talk about in this discussion today are some things that will help you along that journey. I'll give you some insights and some recommendations on both the discipline of asset management, the tools that might be beneficial to you, and maybe even some tips on how to get the funding you need and some internal support to get your uphill stakeholders to give you some funds to do the things you'd like to do. As we get started, I'd like to just review some of the basic things about asset management. There are really two key disciplines as you start down this journey. Oftentimes we hear our customers tell us that they're really concerned about operational needs. This is the ability for you to get those assets requested and on the desktops of your users and keep those assets refreshed and usable and viable to do the functions they need to grow and sustain your business. So from that operational perspective, it's really about that life cycle management, being able to request that asset, track it through its life, make sure it's effective for your end users, and then properly dispose of it. So if you guys are coming from an organization where you're reporting up through an operational level, this is really a key focus. You want to make sure that the value you're going to deliver helps that onboarding process or helps give adequate information about where those assets are located. The next thing that we see is the fiscal and contractual and security-related needs of asset management. This is about understanding the financial side. What are those assets costing us? How do we measure our compliance? Are we in compliance with our software vendors, our regulatory concerns for new things like GDPR? Of course, we've had HIPAA and SOX and PCI and other regulatory things for some time. So this is the other side of the equation. Oftentimes, if you're reporting up through a level of management that the ITAM responsibility is kind of flowing through the CFO's office, then your first focus to get your arms around how much these assets are costing you and how you can do forecasting and planning to be able to be strategic with where the business is going. So you kind of have to look at where you are in your organization, what's your upline management, what's the key drivers, what are the business drivers you're after, and then make sure you're delivering that. So many times I'll see customers who go out and try and solve all the world's problems with asset management, but they start on the wrong process first, and it's not really what's driving their upline stakeholders, and so the upline management kind of dries up and says, hey, you're not giving me what I wanted, so therefore there goes the money. So make sure you understand what the business issue is. We'll talk more about those business issues in a second. Together, both operational and fiscal issues make up the whole ITAM concept. So let's take a look more at a graphical representation. If we look at the ITAM repository and think about that operational side of it, we start out oftentimes with that asset request. Today, many of you are probably doing this in a service management tool or help desk tool. You want to be able to allow the end users to say, hey, I need a new laptop, I need a new hard drive or some memory or a storage or software. And then you manage that request. That request then goes to purchasing or checks to see if it's in inventory first, then goes to purchasing. Purchasing then has to order it, and we get it received. We put an asset tag on it, and we begin its life cycle. Many times I hear customers talk about starting asset management because they have a discovery tool like SCCM or our product EPM or others, BigFix, whatever it might be. But really, what really matters in asset management is if you don't know what you own, if you can't track the origination of that through a procurement, it's really hard to manage the things you aren't sure what you have. What I mean by that is you might have 1,000 assets that you've procured, but you might have a discovery tool out there, whatever tools you're using, and maybe you only have agents on 750 of those devices. So where's those other 250? I've been to customers who have that problem, large customers, who've lost upwards of 1,000 laptops, brand new laptops, because they didn't understand what was purchased and they had no way to track it through its life cycle. So what's really key in this equation is we have to understand what we own. And then once we've captured that ownership information and we know what we have, then we use our discovery tools, again, like SCCM or our product EPM, to go out and validate those assumptions that have been made so we can get a report back on those devices. And I can use other things like a barcode scanning, RFID technology, whatever is necessary to give me some report back that that asset actually exists. And we leverage that combination of knowing the procurement record with the discovery tools to validate that this thing is really where we think it is and it's performing the way we want it to perform. So that kind of represents the operational side of the house for asset management. And then on the other side, we have the procurement or contractual information. Many of you have probably lived through audits or are fearful of a future audit with a software vendor or a regulatory concern. And so understanding exactly where we are with compliance is a big issue. Many times our customers will tell us that they just came out of an audit and they never want to go through it again. So making sure that we're compliant with our agreements is a big issue, and leveraging those contracts to know when does an asset expire from a maintenance agreement or a service agreement so that I can effectively manage that and reduce my costs. We also are concerned about cost allocation. This is understanding where is that spend going? How many of these assets are being consumed by sales or marketing or engineering or a particular business line? If I don't have that insight and information, it's really difficult for your CFO to be able to understand where that cost allocation is, and they want to know more about that. We talked a little bit about policy, governance, and risk. If you look at the top two issues today in order to provide a stable security environment, number one, know what hardware assets you have. Number two, know what software assets you have. So we talked a little while ago when I first introduced, I said, let's find some ways to get some assistance as you're trying to look for funding. I can tell you right now, one of your best friends being able to go to your executive team and get support for asset management is the security team, because they desperately need to know what assets are where and who's using them and what software is on those assets. And so together with your security team, you can give a very compelling story to your executive team to get funding for an asset management program. So this kind of represents the kinds of features and capabilities that are there. But behind all of this is something we call process. And process is such an important part of asset management. So you need to make sure that things like your user policies and procedures fall in line with the technology tools you're using, and make sure that those technology tools have the ability to enforce or assist you in making sure that the movement of those assets are in compliance. This requires some integration with your HR team, your legal team, to make sure that you're unified in getting these processes and policies to help you support your asset management program. Gartner will tell us that when you look at their studies, 80% of ITAM is related to process, and only 20% of it is the tool. So we could sell you the best tool in the world, but if you don't wrap that around good processes inside of your organization, it's really hard to be successful. I've been to companies where we've looked at their internal policies. They've got a real problem with being able to get people to give their assets back after they're done or a person leaves the company. And so the managers will just tend to hoard that. I'm sure many of you struggle with that. And oftentimes we'll dig under the covers and we'll find out that their internal policies, the user policies, the administrative policies of the company make it so that those people can keep those assets without any kind of penalty or enforcement. So that's where we have to bring process into this whole gamut. At Ivanti, we've leveraged our experience. Prior to Ivanti, we were two companies combined, Heat Software and Landesk. Landesk, I came from the Landesk side. We've been in business for over 30 years. We have a lot of experience about inventory and asset management, but we also leverage some of the standard bodies throughout the industry, and ITAM happens to be one of those. If you're not familiar with them, they're a great resource where your team can go out and get some training. They're kind of tool agnostic, but they're there to just teach you the best practice of those disciplines. You can become certified in hardware asset management or software asset management, and they're a great resource. Along with some consulting from Flycast and others, you should be able to get your arms around this and get going. But let's take a second and really try to understand why do your executives care about asset management? As I've traveled around the world over the last few years, I've met with many executives and many different teams, and I hear of 6 things. And I think these 6 things, let's review them quickly because I think it'll give you some insight. And as you're trying to plan your program or grow your program, if you can get so that you can answer these 6 issues, you'll be able to have real value at the executive level and get the money and the funding and the support that you need to build the programs. I think most of you know you want and need. The challenge is, how do I get the resources? How do I get all the tools I need? So number one, the first thing we hear when I walk into a room, people will say, Todd, I just don't know what we have. I don't know where it's at, and I'm not sure who's using it. All I know is that I hear a constant chatter about we're not giving you everything you need, and I see the spend. But I don't really know for sure what we have. We have a variety of tools. We have all kinds of Excel spreadsheets, but every time I go to a source, they're different. So we're just not accurate. We've got to find a way to consolidate this. It's just too complex. The next thing they'll tell me out of almost the same breath is not only do I not know what I have, I don't have any idea what it's costing me. I don't know where that cost is allocated. I can't be beneficial to my peers. This is a CIO speaking. Hey, when they ask me, what's our forecast? How are we going to grow the business? I'm embarrassed because I can't tell you where the spend is. I know we have servers and laptops and mobile devices and infrastructure and all kinds of medical devices, but I can't cost allocate them. I can't tell you where that spend is by department, and I really need that to become effective. The next thing they'll tell me is that, and this could be possibly number one or number two if they've just come out of an audit, is you know what, we're really concerned about compliance. We simply can't afford the exposure or the time or the money if we get in an audit. And interestingly enough, most executives will tell me it's not about the cost as much as it is the exposure. The goodwill of the business being publicized in the press for being in breach of an audit, a software audit or a regulatory audit, is a major concern. We've all read the newspapers. We've seen what happens when a breach happens, the impact that has on the valuations of companies. And so this is a top concern for executives. And asset management is at the very heart of that because you need to know which assets have that sensitive information on them and be able to provide that. And as I mentioned earlier, if you're working with your security team, they will find that invaluable as you provide them quality information about which assets are owned by who. The next thing these executives will generally tell me is, hey, we're concerned about the end user experience. And so it's just taking too long to onboard an employee. A new employee comes in, it's taking 2 weeks. We're just struggling with this. We don't have any way to automate the distribution of software. Our end users are frustrated and they don't have any confidence in IT. And as you all know, when confidence goes down in IT, shadow IT grows. So when you're not able to deliver the goods, then your end customers go and do it on their own. And that just adds to the complexity and problem. So when you think about CIOs, for example, I know we've all heard the statistics that most CIOs in our industry today last less than 3 years. When you think about it, it's really no surprise. They don't know what they have, they don't know what it's costing them, and their end users are frustrated. So you might say, well, gosh, Todd, does that really have anything to do with asset management? And what I'm telling you is it has almost everything to do with asset management. Asset management is a broad discipline, and there's lots of things, and it's a journey. There's no way that any one of you can go out tomorrow if you're just starting from fresh and 2 months from now have an asset program. It's a journey. It's going to take you 18 months or so to get things going, but there's a lot of high-value steps that you can build and pass that information and get more and more as you move along. The next thing they'll tell me kind of after they've vented on these first four is they'll say, look, we've got to figure out how to do more with less. I've got to reduce that manpower. There's too much complexity. And I think we all experience that in the IT world. It can be very complex when we have a vault of a variety of players and pieces there and no way to bring that information because it's grown over time. You've got mergers and acquisitions, and it just turns into this very difficult chore. And the final thing that the executives will tell me is, hey, I really want enterprise fiscal accountability. And this is the ability to kind of put an end to this IT black hole where I have no information, I have no knowledge. I really want to have good information to give to the business. I want to make people accountable for the assets that they're stewards over. And so I'll give you a quick example. I tell this story. A few years ago, I met with a company. The CIO was very frustrated. He was constantly being belittled by several executives on the business line because IT couldn't deliver anything. He was frustrated. He had no asset management program. And so this one individual, one of the vice presidents, was really hard on him. And So we put a system in together with him, got them up and running, started to gather this data that we've been talking about. So he knew what he had, he knew who was using it. And in preparation for one of the big meetings where he knew this gentleman was going to give him a bad time, he ran some reports. And sure enough, in the meeting, we'll call this business line manager, Bill, and the CIO, Jim. Bill says to Jim, you know what, you guys are never delivering anything. You know, we have to have this to grow the business. Jim said, hey, wait a sec, Bill, just a sec. I knew you were going to be ready for me this year, but I also did some research, and I want to share one thing with you. A year ago at this time, you told us that your team of 100 people had to have a specific software package in order to grow the business. So I did some research just in preparation for this meeting, Bill, and of the 100 people that you claimed needed that software, which, by the way, cost the company $180,000 a year ago, in the last 6 months, only 17 people of the 100 have logged into that application. That's what enterprise fiscal accountability means. It's the ability for you as an asset management team to have real knowledge and real insight into how those assets are being consumed and where they're allocated. Those are the game-changing conversations, and that's what your executives, your CIOs and CFOs, and those of you who are on the phone who are CIOs and CFOs, I think that those are the kinds of experiences you want to have. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to take and show you a little sneak peek of the next version of our product and kind of show you how we bring all of those components together, and then we'll open it up to some questions and talk about both the product if you have some questions, or just how you can make ITAM work in your environment. So if you'll excuse me real quick, I'm going to jump over to another screen, and let's hope this is going to work for us. I'm logging into our new product. It's in Azure. It's up in the Azure cloud, and what a neat technology we have. I'm actually, believe it or not, sitting in a parking garage. I'm traveling today with a Wi-Fi hotspot and showing you this using a little AT&T hotspot, so that's pretty cool. One of the things that we tried to do with our asset management product to help you, our customer, is give you meaningful data. It's all great if we have all this data, but we don't put it in a presentation where you can see it. So we've created a multitude of different dashboards depending on who you are. If you're managing contracts, you'll see a contracting dashboard. If you're a procurement person, you'll see procurement dashboards. If you're an executive, maybe you want to see the overall spend dashboard. But what we want to do is present that information to you in a meaningful and powerful way so that your stakeholders can go, wow, I see the difference. And let me give you another little tip. I'm sure most of you are aware of this, but a lot of times we'll see our customers who will go out and jump in and start solving all these problems, but they never document where they came from. It doesn't do you any good to go and solve your company's problems if you don't document where you came from so that you can show the improvement. I hear so many of our customers struggle with getting funding because they didn't take the time to document what it was like before they started. So just a little tip there. Make sure you have some comparative documents to say this is what it looked like when we started, and here's what we've done for you as we move forward. If we look at the asset repository, this is where we would see a variety of things. I don't have a lot of data in here because this is the latest build that we'll be releasing this product in July. But I do have some information here to kind of give you an idea of what an asset would look like that's been fully populated and managed. I'm going to have to scroll here. I want this to be a little larger for you to see on your screen, so I've kind of scrolled my browser down a little bit. But for any given asset that you put into our tools, you'll be able to see a variety of information. Our design goals were to make it possible so that from whatever location, from whatever asset you're on, you could know everything there was to know about that asset so that you could look at all the details. So you'll see here, you can see the name, asset tag, serial number, and on the left-hand side here we have make, model, and part number information. We tell you what catalog item it came from. In the center column, we've got the asset status. So this means if this asset's been assigned to someone, it would say assigned. If it's in inventory, it would say inventory. If it were in repair, it would say repair. We can tell you what environment it's in, so you can modify these and create your own different lists. But in this particular case, it's in production. Here I'm going to set some use policies and some information about that asset. Does it have regulatory information on it? Is it a high secure device? Are there things that I need to know that when I'm running my metrics and running my exception reports that I should be very careful with about this asset? That's what I use this section for. Here you can see the assigned user, the location, the purchase date, because we're integrated with purchasing. We'll tell you how old the asset is in age, so that you can be proactive in doing your refreshes and know exactly how old each asset is. The warranty terms and conditions. This is the basic set of information that's available, but across the top here we have a variety of tabs. And let me walk you through some of those because I think there's some interesting information that you'll be intrigued with. So on the Discovery tab, we want to tell you the kind of a comparison between what's the assigned values. In other words, I've assigned this to Andrew. I've assigned the location to London office, but my discovery tool came back and said, meaning Discovery, our EPM product or SCCM or BigFix or whatever your discovery tool you're using, we can consume that data. So you can see here I've assigned it to Andrew, but my automated agent's telling me this was being used by Bill Barker. I've assigned it to the London office, but guess what? My discovery tool is telling me that it came from the corporate office in Salt Lake City. Built into our tool is an IP mapping to location capability. That's the kind of information you need to get out of your discovery tools to help validate where those assets are. Discovery is just that. It's the ability to leverage automated tools or RFID or barcode scanning to give you some insight into where that asset really exists. And down below here, you can get other configuration data about how many hard drives, how much memory, CPU, operating system, all the details that you'd be expecting from your inventory tools. Notice that we had assigned this asset to Andrew. Well, if I click on this tab, it shows me all the other assets that I've assigned to Andrew. How many times have we had an employee leave and we scrambled to figure out what assets did that person have? We wanted to make that easy. The Relationships tab. This is where we're going to gather information about the asset and any related, how it relates to other assets. So example, if our discovery tool comes in and says this is a physical host and it's associated with the following virtual devices or virtual sessions, we want to make sure that you can see those relationships. You can manually map relationships or whatever is discovered through our discovery services. So this is a way to see the impact of changing out an asset, or if that asset goes down, what all is it going to affect. You could actually map these to business services so that you could say this asset drives our financial accounting system. That way you have a tie-in between the physical asset and the services that it provides. Contracts, as I mentioned earlier, it's super important to be able to see every contract in the system at the asset level. When I get ready to close out a maintenance agreement or renew a maintenance agreement or an entitlement or a purchase agreement, a service agreement, a lease, I need to know exactly which assets are impacted. That way I can be proactive when I run a report and say, hey, I've got a maintenance agreement expiring and it touches 35 devices. And, well, you know what? I look at those devices. Those are pretty important. I better refresh this darn thing. So that's why we'll kind of look at contracts later. Vendor, I want to see the details about the vendor. We support something called a vendor scorecard. A vendor scorecard is the ability for your team while they're out working on the asset to say, you know what, this thing is just really troublesome. So I'm going to put in a new scorecard entry, put in here some quality. This is very poor. Maybe you write a little note here about why this particular asset isn't responding well, some of the challenges you're having. And then when you save that, I've saved a bunch, so I won't save another one. When you get ready to go negotiate with that vendor, all of that detail's there. And we store vendor comments at each individual asset level and at the procurement level and at the contracting level. So you have a broad view of how well that vendor is performing in your environment. Finance. From the Finance tab, I can see the details about the acquisition cost of this asset. In fact, I can even take a step further with one click and see all the details about the purchase order. So I can see things like how many assets were actually acquired from that purchase order. So maybe I've got a reclaim or a recall. I now immediately know all the assets that came in on that purchase order. I can see all of the individual invoices that are associated with that purchase order and the shipments. I can even see the service requests that were fulfilled by that purchase order. I'm sure many of you are thinking, do I have to enter all of this in? Of course not. We're building a series of connectors that will go out and pull that data from your sources into the system. We expect that to be an automated process so that you don't have to manually do that information, but you need access to it so that you can pull it in from your existing procurement systems. The next thing we have is on this side, we talked about that financial owner. So this is where you assign this to a cost center or a business unit so that you can say, hey, here's a report. Here's all the assets that went to sales. Here's all the assets that went to marketing. You can even tie it to a capital asset system so you can put a GL code in there. We calculate for you automatically straight line depreciation and something we call market price, where you can go in and just do a percentage and say, this is the current street value of these assets. One of my favorite things is financial transactions. Oftentimes we spend a lot of energy negotiating the price of an asset, and we feel good about ourselves if we save $300 on a laptop. But what really matters is, what did that asset cost us over its lifetime? So we're able to capture the acquisition cost, the maintenance agreement cost, any kind of service requests or incident costs that come in because maybe the product had to be repaired or a hard drive went out or whatever. All of those costs are what really matter, because when you go back to renegotiate with that vendor, you want to be able to look over here at the total cost of ownership. If I can scroll there. See that total cost of ownership. That way I know the full cost of that asset. So maybe I saved $300 up front, but you know what? Bottom line was that asset was not very high quality, and it cost me 3 times the acquisition cost just to support it. So that's what we do with financial transactions. If the asset were disposed, you'd see a bunch of disposal information. We have the ability to capture notes, so maybe I want to be able to just put in the original configuration as it came from the vendor, or some help files or FAQs. The same thing with the attachments. We can attach, maybe it's the original user's manual or some files or a help guide. The scan log, this is a fun one. Every time you scan with our barcode scanning technology, this asset out in the field, we're going to give you a history of every time it was scanned. So you know how we changed it. We went out to the field, we scanned it, and we said, hey, this is no longer being used by Bill, it's being used by Susan. So we changed that, and you'll be able to see that scan information. Inventory details. We want you to be able to know exactly all the locations where this asset existed over its life cycle. Started out in one inventory facility, went to a person, went to a different person, went back into inventory, so forth and so on. And the last thing, two other things, is audit history. Audit history is the ability for you to see who changed every attribute that matters. So the time and login ID of the person who made those changes. And finally, installed software. I want to be able to see all the software that's on that device. So we're pulling from our discovery a list of all the software that's on that device so that you can see the last usage. Remember my story about Bill being able, or Jim being able to tell Bill, hey, your team hasn't used this. We have to be able to support that kind of capability. So that's kind of a quick overview of the kinds of things we're trying to do to help you be able to answer those 6 executive questions. I know where it's at. I know how much it costs, and I know how to. We can talk about compliance here in a second as we look at contracts, because we capture all of that entitlement detail. And then how can I do more with less? When the product ships, you'll see some integration with our technology we call RES and EPM, the ability to automate onboarding and offboarding tasks and to automatically distribute software or reclaim software. We do support a product catalog, and a product catalog gives us the ability to put in the items in our catalog that we want our consumers to use. And the neat thing about it is it tells us all the assets that are in our environment that came from that catalog, and it also tells us everywhere that catalog item exists in inventory. So I can see all the locations across my business where I have some of those items in stock. Includes active orders. Maybe I need to know if there's something else coming in and who the approved vendors are, and a suggested alternative. So let's say this particular item is out of stock, and you want your end users to say, you know, that one's not available, but try this one. We think it's a really good substitute. So you can do that through the catalog. And let's go take a real quick look at contracts, and then we'll open it up for some questions. So contracts, I'll just show you the sample contract here so you can see the different kinds of entitlements. A given contract can have multiple line items. We call them instruments, meaning that I might have a service agreement, a maintenance agreement, all from Dell or from Flycast that says, hey, I'm under this contract, I've sold you some software, I've sold you some hardware, sold you a service agreement, a maintenance agreement, and then for any one of those, you can go down and drill into the details so that you can see exactly the information that's related to that specific agreement. In this case, an entitlement, we capture all of the relevant metric information that you would need to pass along to our sister product called License Optimizer, or if you're calculating that compliance on your own in an audit, all of that information about the software would be available. We give you the renewal terms where you can go in and say this is renewable, your renewable cost, your upload, dates of notification, termination details, language, and then of course you can go out and assign that to any given asset in your environment so that you can link it to, a given set of assets or services related to that particular license type. So those are contracts. We support things like leases, volume purchase agreements, NDAs. All of those are unique and individual capabilities. So that's kind of a really quick overview. We're got about 10 minutes left for some questions. So I'll open it up.
We have a ton of questions. Todd, we have a ton of questions. Let me start out with question number one. This one comes from Kyle. He says he likes the new UI and would like to know if the same changes are in the future for ISM.
I can tell you that there's a new UI exercise happening with the SM team to enhance their UI. I'm not sure when that'll be available because although this is built on the same platform. And let me explain that to you, the listeners. One of the initiatives at Ivanti was that our customers told us they wanted tight integration between our services. So this product, Asset Manager, is built on the same platform as our service management platform. So it's seamless integration between service and asset management. So back to your question, yes, there is a refresh. I'm not familiar with exactly when it will be released on the service management side.
And our next question comes from Matt. Does the asset repository pull or populate the CMDB in the service manager?
So just as I was saying, this is an extension of the CI and service manager. So these attributes that you're looking at here are simply an extension to that CI. So all of that detail is there. What you'll see in the future as we bring these two products together, there'll be a tab down here for you service management people that will probably say incident. And so not only will you be able to see all of the asset management information, but you'll click on a tab that shows you all of the incidents related to that asset.
Next question. I assume this will integrate with an ERP system, but does this offer the ability to generate a PO request, mainly asking for organizations do not have an ERP system, or is too small for one?
Great question, and the answer is we do have robust APIs that can either push or pull data, and our intention, we assume that most customers would have their own procurement system that we would pull data into, but there is the ability here to create your own custom reports and actually generate through workflow a request that could go out and be a purchase order. So those are things I think you'll see as we refine the product after it's released for those customers who don't have an integrated system. But yes, you could create workflows that say this request comes in and I don't have it in stock, so take this catalog item and generate a purchase order. And then we, of course, would track that out. And as I mentioned before, the purchase orders allow us to see all of the details like invoices and shipments. So those would be available.
And another question, can the two environments, asset and service management, share the same login and present both asset and service management workspaces in one window? It's a good question.
Yeah, so because it is the same platform, for those customers who have both really license types, an asset management license type and a service manager license, they can share, they can create different logins. So those logins could be able to share data. or they could, log in have two different, logins, one for an asset management side or one for a service management side, or as the service management people do today, they can create any kind of a custom form or custom access based on identity to see any of those forms, which will include asset management.
And Paris, the answer to your question is yes. You can go ahead and email me at info@flycastpartners.com, and I will set you up with a copy of this. So that's info@flycastpartners.com. So that's the answer to your question. Next set of questions, can we set baselines? They want to know.
I'm not sure I understand the question, but excuse me. I suspect what you're saying is a baseline in terms of the cost, or can I get a clarification there on baseline?
Okay, if you can clarify that question for us, folks.
A baseline report that says, okay, here's a report at this point in time, here's the snapshot, and then here's what we're doing now. Is that maybe the question?
Yeah, go ahead and clarify that question for us, and we'll have Todd answer that for you. And can you do asset depreciation?
Yes, I showed that. Let me go back.
Okay.
So under the Finance tab, you'll see that right here we calculate straight line depreciation. So if I change this to 1,200, your salvage value here, we automatically calculate the depreciated value. I suspect in future releases, depending on customer need, you may see different types of depreciation, but we do straight line depreciation out of the box.
Okay, and this question just says subscription apps. I'm not quite sure what's being asked on that one. Subscription apps, do you understand that one?
That's a good question. When this product releases, it will be a cloud product. And I think the important thing to mention on this is that everything I've shown you today, everything I've shown you, the minute you subscribe to this product, working through Flycast, and you acquire a license, everything I've shown you is immediately available. The only thing that's missing is your data. So that's where we're working feverishly to build different connectors to be able to pull your data in so that you can immediately get value. Our goal when we built this was that we didn't expect you to have to be asset management experts or product developers. We wanted it to just work. So now that doesn't mean that you can't customize. We actually have two versions of the product. Our Essentials product, which we'll release first, is kind of a canned solution that will allow you to just get on the boat, and we'll take you on a journey, and we'll keep you updated every month with new features. Or in Q4, you'll be able to buy what we call kind of internally the unplugged version, and it will be just like our service management platform where you can customize it till the cows come home. And, that's good and bad. Sometimes you customize yourself to a point where it's not upgradable. We've all experienced that, and so we're trying to find ways to help you, give you total customization and still keep you with the ability to see and do the new things we're going to be delivering.
Okay, I have a question here. It has a Part A and Part B. Under the product catalog, to populate the catalog, do you have to manually add items to the catalog, or is there a way to automate the process? And Part B is, can you explain more about this feature?
Okay, the product catalog, like anything else in here, could be brought in through an import file. We're having discussions with different partners about being able to bring in their catalog items through an import capability so that the catalog would be kind of updated on a regular basis based on those feeds. So no different than any other aspect of it. You could automate through some connectors the ability to bring in new records. We have an expiration field here that will make it so that you can put a date in. So when that expiration hits, there's processes in the back end that say, look, that can't be bought anymore. And so you have some governance over whether that asset or whether that catalog can be consumed. I'm not sure if that answered all of your question, but send another one if I didn't.
And I have a few more questions. Hopefully we can get through all of these. It's great to have an audience that is so willing to participate. I want to thank all of you for your participation. Paris, I did receive your email, and I'm already working on making sure we get you what you're looking for. So thank you from our friends at East West Bank. Next question, can you do idle time on apps to show how it's actually being used?
So it depends on the discovery tool that we're connected up to. I can say that, let me go here. On our tool with EPM, show you the screen here if I can scroll over. Apologize, I just got my browser shrunk down. You'll notice here we have usage frequency and duration. If that's your question, we do track how often that that software is used and the duration. So we can actually tell you if the customer is, you know, what level of time they're spending on those software assets. Now that depends on the discovery. If you're using another discovery tool, I'm not familiar with what FCCM does or BigFix or others. We can consume their data, but whether they have that capability or not, I'm not in a position to answer that. I'm just not an expert in their products.
Okay, we have a three-part question. Software catalog, how is that updated? Who owns it? And can we add locally developed apps?
So I think there's a couple of questions in there. If you're going to add locally developed apps, that's really making sure that the discovery tool can do that. And using our EPM product, yes, you can go create your own software entities that will be discoverable by our tool. Again, I can't answer whether other third-party tools can do that or not. And then on the software side, I'll show you a record here. So if we come down here to software, this would be a listing of all your software types. And I've just created a couple in here as examples. You can put in the title and the version and all of this detail. But remember, what's really magical about the software is I need to know what the entitlements are. So I need to go back to that contract record where I have a legal record of what I really own from the vendor. So we link those two together. You can define whatever software packages you want in here, but the updating of the usage of that data really depends on the discovery tool. So I know you can do custom applications with our tools, and whether you're using a third party or not, I don't know if that's possible. Hope that answered the question.
Okay, and with that, Todd, those of you that still have additional questions, please go ahead and email those to us at info@flycastpartners.com. That's info@flycastpartners.com, and we'll make sure we get an answer for you within 5 business days. If you want to go ahead and just reach out and call us at 844-FLYCAST, that's 844-359-2278. You can talk to a live human being and possibly get an answer today. We want to thank all of you for participating in today's webinar. Sorry we couldn't get to all the questions today, but we have run out of time, and we do know that we've taken you all away from some very busy schedules, and we appreciate your time very much so. Todd, thank you for taking time out of your day to present for us. It was a great presentation.
Thank you, and I wish you all the best as you're trying to get your arms around ITAM. It's a fun journey. There's a lot of cool things you can do and a lot of value you can bring to your company. So best wishes to you, and if we can help in any way, we would love to. Thanks for your time today.
On behalf of Ivanti and Flycast Partners, I want to wish you a great weekend, and until next time.